Hello, and welcome to the Liberati Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and today I am honored to be here with three wonderful women from the Liberati's board: Ashli, who serves as president, Elaine, who serves as treasurer, and Lily, our newest member, who is our head of program development. Happy Women's History Month, and welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
I feel like I need a head covering. But in all seriousness, it's a pleasure to be here, and we thought we would do a special episode about women's empowerment after leaving high control religions. And before we jump into it, maybe we can go around the Zoom room and just briefly introduce ourselves, maybe share a fun fact, break the ice. Perhaps we can do alphabetical order: Ashli, then Elaine, and then Lily.
Works for me. Hi everyone. I'm Ashley. I live in Tampa, Florida with my dog Fozzie. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness and I've been out for a while now. I do wonder at what point I should stop telling you the years that I've been out and just say that I'm old. But it's been about 15 years now. So I'm so happy to be a part of the Liberati and a part of the ex-witness community.
Ashli, you're like fine wine.
Thanks, Ryan.
Hi,
And we,
everyone. I'm Elaine, and I was born in third generation, and I had a great childhood in Europe. And then later in life, I had a faith crisis, and I was able to fade out of the organization, thankfully.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Lily. I live in Oakland with my wife and our two little black cats. Well, not so little anymore, but our two chubby black cats. And I was also raised in as a Jehovah's Witness, with my mom being an early in age convert, and my father having been raised in and being in and out throughout the rest of his adult life.
and hello, everyone. My name is Ryan, and I was born and raised in a fifth generation JW family. I was an Uber JW, went to Bethel when I was 19. A series of unlikely factors led to my awakening after 15 years at Bethel. And I was PMO, physically and mentally out, for 7 years. And I've been free just for 4 years. So I'm really grateful. And I find a lot of joy and meaning in paying it forward and helping others break free. So today, on our initial, this is a special day because it's our very first podcast, hopefully not our last. And we wanted to discuss and dedicate our first episode to women's empowerment after leaving high control religions. We want to celebrate the thousands of fearless girls who have broken the chains of patriarchal high control groups like Jehovah's Witnesses, including our three incredible guests who are with us today. So thank you in advance. I almost called you sisters, but thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your perspectives. And we really want to amplify the voices of these amazing independent women in our community. Before we jump in, perhaps Ashli can briefly give us a little bit more information about the Liberati and its mission.
Yeah, so the Liberati is an officially recognized 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization. It was created to provide practical support, community education, and resources for those leaving high control groups or restrictive religious environments. So the Liberati Board and its volunteers are all made up of real people with real stories, Currently, all of us are former Jehovah's Witnesses, but we are offering our help to other vulnerable people from different high control groups. We are really focused on helping individuals navigate their transition to freedom with dignity and self-determination. So, officially, our written mission is to empower survivors of high control religions to break free. We will give them the practical advice and assistance they need to succeed. To accomplish this, we will build a safe and supportive community, provide education, coaching, counseling, and in some cases, financial aid and emergency housing.
Thank you, Ashley. You're so professional.
I try.
So our first question, what are some of the specific challenges that you faced as women within the Jehovah's Witness community?
Sure. I felt increasingly suppressed and numbed out as a person. I felt particularly silenced about how I actually felt about many policies. So, a woman who vocalizes a concern about something that's maybe mishandled or an unhealthy policy, she'll very quickly be labeled as spiritually weak or a negative influence. And then social invitations will quickly dry up. And I just didn't have the strength for a while to withstand that. And this happens more so for a woman than a man because there has just been excessive conditioning for years around women are to be submissive and they are to display a quiet and mild spirit. She may actually be a very insightful advocate, and she would likely be expressing what quite a few other people were already thinking but didn't dare say. And also, I noticed that worldwide, the organization likes to use thought-stopping cliches such as the matter has been handled, or also this very passive and very common refrain of leave it in Jehovah's hands.
Lily, would you like to add maybe some challenges that you experienced within the witness community?
Sure. I would say that my experience of, not quite fitting in with what was sort of expected of me as a girl in the organization, actually started very, very early. So I'd say I started feeling really out of place even by the time I was maybe 5 or 6. I remember being that little and asking my mother, well, why is it that women don't get to give talks? Why don't women get to, even hand out the microphones? And just feeling very unsatisfied with the answers that she gave me at the time. And then also being that age, and my father's sister would, say things to me like, well, so, if you're good enough, someday you can be an elder's wife. And, one, it really wasn't something that was appealing to me as a child at all. But also just in general, this feeling that, the best thing that you can ever really be is in relation to somebody else who's actually doing something important.
Wow. That you reminded me of an acronym that I'm kind of embarrassed to say now, but at Bethel, we used to we used to call circuit overseer wives, which a circuit overseer, his wife, is like the greatest privilege that a woman can aspire to have within the Jehovah's Witness community. And we used to say they were cows, CO wife. Can you imagine? Pretty cringe.
I have no response to that. Wow.
Holy cow. Ashley, would you like to share maybe some of the challenges that you experienced or that you observed?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Ryan, the Jehovah's Witness organization is operating under this very strict patriarchal hierarchy. And as a woman, I feel like, growing up in the organization, I feel as though I was taught incorrectly what my value was as a person. And one thing that really bothers me now when I look back on that is how overly sexualized women are in a lot of religious environments, but especially in the Jehovah's Witness religion. You know, just how sexualized I was personally. I remember fully adult brothers making inappropriate comments toward me or about me when I was as young as 14 years old. You know, and in addition to that, like you guys were saying, women have no say in the doctrine, policies, or any of the decision making within the organization. As women, we were not able to aspire to any type of growth within the organization, and it truly feels so limiting. And when I took my first psychology course in college, I was really able to start putting that into words. And, you know, when I learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that really hit the nail on the head for me because at the top of this pyramid is self-fulfillment. It's self-actualization. It's achieving one's full potential. And you can't do that as a woman within the organization. So I think from a very young age, I felt that. And so those two things really, I think, led me astray in my thinking about my own value. And I had to spend a lot of time undoing that.
Thank you, Ashley, for those insightful comments. And just pulling out Maslow's hierarchy of needs, very impressive. We'll continue our follow-up question. And perhaps we can begin with Elaine. Were there any turning points for you that made you question your place in the community or the teachings that you were following as a witness?
Yes, my number one turning point was the day I happened to stumble upon a mainstream news report about the verdict of the Candace Conti child abuse case. It shook me, and that this organization, you know, could show up in that way. It was just deeply disturbing.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really ultimately what led to my awakening as well. Maybe we can continue with a turning point for Lily.
Sure. So, I think there were a lot of, there were a lot of things along the way that had me questioning things. But I think that the big turning point for me was when I was 14 and I saw someone who was a young woman at the congregation who, had been a friend who had always admired, and seeing her get disfellowshipped. And it was something where, I knew that she wasn't going to be coming back to the meetings, but I think the most devastating part was realizing that those of us who had been friends with her over all these years were never going to be able to speak with her again, even outside of the Kingdom Hall. And this is somebody who, again, I'd known her basically my whole life. She's someone who had been there for me the year before when my father died, and, had always been a true friend. And now people were acting as if she was dead and would only talk about her in these very sort of gossipy whispers. And it's one of those things, it's, all you really think is, okay, all it takes is one mistake and I'm going to be next.
Wow. I was curious, did you ever reconnect with this friend?
No, I never did. And I've tried, looking up just to see, what she's doing now, and unfortunately, I could never find her. So, I hope that, Lindsay, I think if you're here, if you happen to be hearing this, I hope you're doing really well. A lot of us really missed you, and we really still cared about you.
It's beautiful. Ashley, were there any turning points for you?
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say disfellowshipping, but now that you bring it up, that was always huge for me growing up. Like it felt so abnormal and so unloving, even though we were in, God's one true loving organization. Yeah, I think I hear a lot of folks talk about the dam breaking or the shelf that was piled so high with doubts that it eventually crashed down. I think that was kind of the way for me, but there was one specific event in my childhood that I will never forget that I thought I would share. So I was out in service. I was very young, I think maybe 10 years old, and I was at an apartment building with an older sister. And we were just, going down. It had these, doorbells. We were going down the row of doorbells, just ring every bell, just getting those, doors knocked. And we rang the bell, and this woman came down and was obviously not interested and said so and went back up. And then a minute later, after we had rang the next bell, she came down again. And I think the sister that I was with accidentally rang the same bell. But she came down, and this time she said, my ex-husband was a Jehovah's Witness, and he beat I don't think we can swear here, but that SHIT out of me. And, then she went back up. But as a young kid, it was shocking to me, at being so sheltered and never having heard anything really bad about the organization. I think that was maybe one of those doubts that I put on the shelf, or maybe that was the first one that went on the shelf. But I will never forget that. It was a very interesting experience.
Powerful. Our next segment will touch more on stories of awakening and exiting and rebuilding. Can you each share your journey of awakening and ultimately leaving the organization? What was that process like? Perhaps we can begin with Elaine, please.
Yes, of course. My awakening was really gradual. It lasted roughly 8 years in my 40s and into my early 50s. And it was really an accumulation of observations about domestic abuse and child abuse cases from all over the world. And on the topic of domestic abuse, it just became clear that even elders who are inclined to help are very limited by the policies and the procedures that they must follow. And so in most cases, they can't really get involved at a level that makes a difference, to be honest with you. Um, Abusers have Olympic level denial, and they really only get better with boundaries and consequences, not more prayer or Bible study. And one more aspect of my awakening was that I've just felt increasingly disturbed by the Old Testament itself. The brutality that was supposedly condoned by God, it wasn't something that I could rationalize anymore.
Yeah, if one reads the Old Testament objectively, just for example, the fact that God took a rib from Adam and created the first woman, that the first woman was born from the first man, and so she must be in subjugation. I mean, how patriarchal.
Yeah, even if I am just a rib, I'm a rib with rights. Okay. So
Fellow ribs,
Amen. Amen. Lily, what was your awakening like? It seems that you were asking some deep questions as a little girl and coming to some profound realizations quite early in life that I wish I would have followed your example.
Yeah, I think, yeah, my awakening started very early. I will say though, I think that's also partially because I had a different experience. I think that, when things are going very well, it's easy in some ways not to question things. And I think for myself, I always knew that there was something a little off because we would go to my brother and I would go to the meetings with our mom and our father would stay home and, he would say he believed the things, but he didn't want anything to do with the organization. And, it's sort of this kind of dissonance, I think, sometimes that can create a level of doubt even as a child, because you realize, oh, I'm going to the meetings, but we're not going together, and everyone's kind of judging my mother and referring to her as a spiritual widow or these things, and so. So I think that that's part of why my journey started so early. And thinking about a few kind of specific memories that first started my awakening, I think it actually began maybe as early as the time when I was 8. I remember him going door to door, and there's this older woman that answered the door, and this kind of, very kindly woman. And I remember her bending down to my height and telling me that even though she wasn't going to be taking the magazine I was offering her, she wanted me to know that that doesn't mean that she's a bad person and that there are good people in the world. And at 8, and I immediately just said, "Oh, I know." And even though I knew it's not what I was supposed to say, it's what I genuinely felt. I did know that there were good people out there. And this continued on. This is maybe a little bit of a of a random one, but I remember being 11 and my favorite book series that I was secretly reading was Lord of the Rings. And I was so amazed that this book that, that resonated so much to me, and that, that I really loved. And it was written by someone who was Catholic. And, maybe I know, shocking, right? And, it got me thinking, well, maybe just because, he has different belief system than me doesn't mean that J.R.R. Tolkien is suddenly a bad person. So, a lot of these little things I think that started really adding up. And then, of course, a big one is, by the time that I was 14, it became really obvious to me that I was gay. And, and in some ways, was ready to just accept a life of loneliness, and, just accepting that this is, that was going to be my future, until I realized, wait a minute, am I really going to sacrifice my future and my happiness when I don't really believe in this anymore? And realizing that, it wasn't the truth, and it never had been, and it wasn't worth, trying to sacrifice myself for something that just wasn't real. And so that's why the very early age of 15 is the last time that I ever stepped foot in a Kingdom Hall.
What an amazing story, Lily. So inspiring. And did you have anything else to add about your awakening, Ashley?
Yeah, I think I was very similarly to Lily. I was questioning things from a very young age, and knowing that, it's so funny you said, I know that there are good people in the world. That was also something that I struggled with. Like, this makes absolutely no sense. There are folks that I know from, in the worldly community from school, teachers, students, and neighbors. My parents owned a business, and their clients were like really awesome, genuine people. And they, some folks that I knew outside of the Kingdom Hall were like really more upstanding in my eyes as a little kid than some of the folks at the Kingdom Hall. So, as a kid, you have like such a simplistic mind, right? And you're trying to make sense of this, and it's like, that really just doesn't make sense. And I think at that point, you also haven't yet learned how to necessarily do the mental gymnastics to make yourself believe or stop doubting. So, as a kid, it was very much, this doesn't make sense. And then I remember as I was waking up, uh, wanting to know more about this religion that I've been a part of my whole life, and that I foresee myself being a part of for the rest of my life. And I remember somehow finding or Googling Jehovah's Witnesses and finding a website that I knew was apostate, because there was only one website that I was allowed to view. So I knew it was wrong. And I remember clicking on it and then immediately feeling that fear, that demons were going to come through my screen, and just shutting it down. But it was, these little things that just, it's the shelf again, and the shelf ultimately collapsed for me when I was a teenager, late in my teens, and I was married to a witness, and realizing that, this is the highest position I can attain within the organization, and this is not all that it's cracked up to be, and I'm not enjoying my life. And I, at that point, would have rather die at Armageddon than continue another day as a Jehovah's Witness. I still believed that I was going to perish at Armageddon, and I made the choice anyway, and I was disfellowshipped. Then I got reinstated. That's another thing. But it was really, it was a tough exit, I think, for me. It was tough to reconcile my doubts with reality, and to figure out what reality is. And I think I just relate to you so much, Lily, in having those doubts, being so young, and when you get to be a teenager and you get to really start thinking for yourself, you're kind of realizing like none of this makes sense. And like Elaine had said earlier, we often would get the response, leave it in Jehovah's hands. And that is just not good enough. It is not good enough. It's never good enough. No one should ever accept that as an answer to these really important questions. So yeah, that was it for me.
Thank you, Ashley, for sharing more about your personal journey, the challenges that you had to overcome. It's difficult, focused on leaving a high control group. It's difficult. There are challenges. What were some of those that you faced, and how did you navigate those difficult challenges? Perhaps we can begin with Elaine, please.
For me, the most difficult aspect of leaving was hurting my parents because they have always been so wonderful and reasonable, and I was never in any kind of trouble inside the organization. So this was purely my choice, my need, frankly, to leave. And I'm just so glad that I decided to write a letter to them so that I could get the wording exactly right. So to anyone who's debating about how they're going to announce their departure, that's what I would recommend, because they got the letter, they read it, they could put it down, think about it, pick it back up. And like I said, I felt like the wording was exactly right. And we didn't have that like face to face, that just knee jerk, emotionality and crying that there could have been. So
Thank you for sharing that thoughtful and very considerate suggestion. I'm going to start writing a letter now. Dear Mother,
Oh.
I have a lot of mommy issues. Lily, but did you face any difficulties making your break?
Yeah, I think that, it in some ways kind of similar to Elaine's is, just this feeling of like I am disappointing everybody around me. So, I remember when I was 15, I'd stopped going to the meetings, and having, a couple of these elders who I had known my entire life, and had relied on in different ways, and who'd been there for my family through some difficult times, and having them come to the door and having to explain to them why I didn't want to be a witness anymore. And I was shaking a little bit because it's a scary thing when you're a teenage girl like that. And I think it was very odd because, I was explaining to them, one of the things that that didn't seem right to me was the way that the organization subjugated women. And just from the looks on their faces, I could tell they had no idea what I was talking about. Somehow, in spite of everything, it seemed like it had never occurred to either of them that we were in a patriarchal religion that, where women were second-class citizens. I think for myself, though, again, being raised a Jehovah's Witness, we're always told to be, to stand firm in your beliefs. So that's exactly what I did.
Proud of you. When I see fearless girl facing off against the system, I think of you, Lily.
I was maybe channeling my inner Eowyn from Lord of the Rings, I am no man. Sword reply.
Great reference. Ashley, what challenges did you vanquish on your quest to
Yeah, I
authenticity and liberty?
I think I have to echo Elaine and Lily here in saying that one of the hardest and most challenging parts of leaving was feeling like a bad person. You're disappointing your family, your friends, everyone who raised you, everyone in your community, and we all know what it means to be disfellowshipped, what it means to leave the religion, to be an apostate. And that's hard to shake. That even if you don't believe in the doctrine and you no longer believe in the religion or consider yourself a Jehovah's Witness, that is a really deeply ingrained teaching that is going to take some work to shake yourself of. And that's certainly how I felt. Like Elaine, I was very deeply guilty about the position that I was leaving my mom in because, like Lily, my dad was inactive at that time. And I ended up getting reinstated because of that. And having to sit there and listen to the teachings was very upsetting.
You
But I
must really
still,
love your mother,
I
Ashli.
do. I love my mom. My mom's the best. I didn't want her to suffer. And so that's what I did. Yeah.
So you're technically still a J-dub.
Technically, I'm on the roster. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
So am I.
All
Uh,
right.
we all have different exit strategies, and our circumstances are very unique, and we do our best at the Liberati to understand and support each individual's um, you know, autonomy and choices, what's best for them moving forward. So I know in my case I faded. I believe Elaine, you also faded and may have an alias. But and that's great. We have to do what we have to do. There's no easy way to leave a cult. Um, regarding that rebuilding process, our next question is about community. Did you have a support system as you were exiting, or did you have to like start from scratch and rebuild friendships, relationships, support system? What was that process like? Perhaps Elaine could begin, please.
Certainly. Thankfully, I had stayed in touch with some coworkers from my past, and I was able to tell them what was going on, and they were all very supportive. And also via YouTube, I right away found out about the XJW subreddit, and that just truthfully became my first support system. And I am extremely thankful for the validation and the processing and even the networking that I experienced on there. But I definitely had to give myself permission to watch YouTube in the first place, and you definitely feel like you're doing something wrong. And so I think what helped me do it anyway was I saw the XJW Critical Thinkers channel, JT and Lady C, and they just looked, so well dressed and respectable. And I'm like, okay, what do they know that they wanted to say that they took the time to make these videos? And so I gave myself permission to start there.
Kudos, Elaine. And I love JT and Lady C. They're so real, genuine, very balanced. And there's so many activists now like that are just adorable apostates, apostafarians, like just warm and fuzzy, good vibes. That's what we need. We need more of that. Lily, what was it like for you? Like you were probably the cool kid at school, probably had like all these
Well,
adoring fans.
oh yeah, of course. No, I will say, I had been lucky enough that, I had a bit of I had a few friends at school, ones that, maybe weren't officially supposed to be my friends, but, who I'd begun, hang out with, throughout middle school and high school. I had been homeschooled throughout elementary school. If that had continued, I don't think I would have been able to have, built up nearly as much of a network, of course. So I was lucky to have gone to a regular school for, later on. And I think just having friends that are out in the world, it makes these things start to feel a little more normal, which was nice. And I think, and then something else is I actually got really, really lucky with, when I decided to leave the organization that I actually didn't have to go alone. So actually my little brother Jeremy ended up being by my side, and and was very supportive when for example, when I was began telling our mother why I didn't want to go, and that I didn't believe in some of the practices or agree with some of the beliefs there. And something that was very unexpected is that our mother ended up leaving with us. So she, I think she didn't want to go to meetings without us. And so she ended up being, I would say, physically out, mentally in for a couple of years afterward. And she didn't quite understand all the reasons that we didn't want to go. But she never attempted to force us back in. I think part of the reason is that, she was having her own doubts, and saw this in some ways as her own opportunity to break free and become her own person, which I think also shows that, when you're doubting these things, you never quite know what other people are thinking as well.
Very well said. Ashley, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I, had really lost everyone as we all do when this happens. Because even though I was reinstated, no one really wanted anything to do with me, and I wasn't going to meetings anymore.
Were you the
And
Jezebel influence?
I really was. Yeah, I was a bad influence for sure. And I definitely struggled for a long time with the loss of my support system. But I had some really great coworkers at that time who kind of took me under their wing. And they were so genuinely kind in a way that I had never experienced. I was working as a retail sales rep for a marketing company, and my team lead was this really awesome guy. He started this joke because he knew I had never had birthdays. So he wanted to make up for the many years that I went without birthdays. So every day when I came to meet him, we would go to different retail stores, and every day I would meet the team and he would say, "Happy birthday, Ashley." Every day. It was like this really cute joke. It was so loving and so funny, and it was just meant so much to me. And one day we were at this new retail store, and one of the store managers overheard him saying that to me and thought it was actually my birthday. And that was the day I got my first birthday cake because they threw me a party at lunch, and I had to pretend that it was actually my birthday, even though it wasn't. But so that was really like my first example of just unconditional love. I was still struggling so much though, because even though these people were truly wonderful, they didn't understand what I had been through and couldn't help me in the way that I needed. So the real turning point for me in terms of my support was when I discovered other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because so many of us don't go out and seek out relationships with other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I was kind of averse to that. I think I was still feeling the indoctrination. And that was a turning point for me when I had folks who I could relate to and who understood my story and validated my story.
Totally agree and appreciate how you are so proactive in building this support system and just having those in-person meetups that you've hosted for many years. It's just so cathartic just to be with uh, our fellow survivors and to celebrate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness together. What are some of your observations with the challenges that these individuals are facing, especially women, uh, in their deconstruction and healing process? Perhaps Elaine could begin, please.
Absolutely. I feel like there are three main areas. And the first one, from the stories that I've heard and read, the social area seems to be the most common. The grief of losing most or all of her friends is a really big one. And then also have noticed that, many women leaving are just under practiced really with the assertiveness and, boundary setting skills that it takes to stand up for ourselves, for example, in the workplace. And the second area is the practical area. And in other words, logistical and financial concerns, especially when a marriage doesn't survive, that only the wife woke up. So many witness women didn't really get much formal education past high school, and then some went on to homeschool their children for years. And so in scenarios like that, earning enough money to provide for herself and her children, that's definitely a real challenge at first. But we would be honored to help, though don't hesitate to reach out. And then the third area is the spiritual area, I feel. And from what I've seen so far, that's the least common, but the most challenging because it just goes so deep for men and women alike, really. Those who just previously believed wholeheartedly. Some people, feel that Satan has gotten a hold of their thinking and that their whole existential framework has collapsed.
It can be daunting for sure and can seem overwhelming. Are there any others that Lily or Ashley have observed?
Yeah, maybe actually somewhat going off of Lane's last point on the spiritual area, I would say that a lot of the sort of psychological damage that you have to recover from can be just, I think, really daunting. Part of it is, when you've been told your whole life that, your family and your friends are going to stop talking to you if you make some sort of mistake, then it makes it so hard to learn how to trust people later on when they tell you that they love you. And I also think that for myself, there was a lot to really get past in terms of, some of these fears that I had, very specifically about demons and Armageddon. In spite of some of the doubts I had early on, I took a lot of that very seriously and was very afraid of, if I leave, there's going to be demons after me or I'll die in Armageddon. And for years after being, fully out, I still was having, nightmares about Armageddon and then realizing, okay, wait a minute, I need to actually start planning to have a real future because the world's not going to just end suddenly.
That's intense. I guess the my book of horror stories growing up will do that to you. Some of those images that are not appropriate for children. But
Yeah,
I'm
right.
glad that you have overcome that fear. Ashley, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I love the points that you both made. I also wanted to add that one thing I've heard from moms and even my own mom is a guilt for raising your children in the religion. And I want to specifically touch on that because I think that's something that is not touched on enough for folks. When you raise your child in the Jehovah's Witness organization or any other high control group, there are kind of a few different scenarios that can cause struggles. That your child's going to struggle from being brought up that way. That's kind of a natural part of being a part of an organization, whether it's a cult, a high control religion, or any other type of damaging group. And then, there's the other side of these folks raising their kids in the religion and their child doesn't wake up, but they do. And then there's a struggle between, do I stay true to myself and live my life authentically and lose my relationship with my child? Or do I continue to be a part of and support an organization that I feel is wrong and damaging to keep this relationship when at the same time it's potentially hurting your child? And I want to recognize that struggle. There's no good answer there, right? That's so, so hard. And I think either way, either decision, whatever way you go, can carry a ton of guilt. And so, like I said, no good answer, but just wanted to highlight that folks in this type of situation as a mom or as a parent at all, you're not a bad person, and you have to make the choice that's right for you. And we absolutely understand and support that.
Thanks for highlighting that, Ashley. It's a challenge, and it's so important to give ourselves grace and and to love ourselves, to focus on self-love. I'm still trying to learn that myself. So thank you for bringing that up. Perhaps our next question we can ask, what would you say is the first step towards healing after exiting a high control religion? Elaine, would you please like to share?
Well, we definitely recommend personalized therapy if you could possibly afford it, but also listening to podcasts about that person's areas of concern. I think the Mormon Stories podcast is top notch. Their interviews just really get into their very similar inner journeys, through a faith crisis and successfully out on the other side. And just hearing all the beautiful humans who went through their dark night of the soul and are now doing well is just so reassuring.
That's a beautiful quote, Elaine. Lily, did you have any other recommendations towards healing?
Yeah, I would say I think a big step is just starting to build connections outside of the organization, whether it's online or in real life, and really just getting to, step a toe into the world a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that, Lily.
I think to add to Elaine and Lily's really excellent points, I would say self-love is one of the most important things you can strive for, and not something that we're taught as Jehovah's Witnesses at all. I think rephrasing or move those words around in your mind. It's not undeserved kindness, it's absolutely deserved kindness. Give yourself that grace, uh, give yourself permission to question things. Understand that what you're going through is part of the process. So if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling uncertain, that's okay. It's okay to not have all of the answers right away, and it's okay for that to be, a process. And realizing that you may have some trauma, and that's okay as well. You got to work on it. You have to work on your self-love, and kind of taking it one step at a time, I think is a good idea. And so at the Liberati, we are trying to offer all of the support that we can to encourage that process of healing, growth, self-determination, self-development. And we're trying to do that practically. We are able to offer emotional support through our virtual support groups. As you mentioned, Ryan, we're doing some in-person groups as well, which are so, so incredibly healing. I really encourage folks to try those out. The virtual group you can attend with your video off, with your sound off. No one needs to know that you're there, and you don't need to show your face or to share within the group unless or until you're comfortable with that. So in addition to that, community support and support groups, we are able to offer financial aid for emergency needs at times, and working on potential housing situations where we can. So really no one should have to go through this alone. A lot of us have, and that is so completely unnecessary when you have so many thousands of people here ready to support you, know what you're going through, and want to help you through that.
Thank you, Ashley. Our next question, what advice would you offer to a woman who is awakening from a high control religion or who is trapped in an abusive relationship? What are some small steps that she can take to gain control over her life?
Right. So, to anyone listening to this who's feeling herself awakening but is feeling scared, I would just say, don't go talk about it to people for a while. A good first step, I feel, is one that can be done discreetly, and that is to just simply start reading quality outside information and at the same time minimize reading the organization's information as much as possible. And then Another tip I think is going for walks. That means you'll be getting exercise and fresh air, but also you can listen to podcasts on your phone and just wearing earbuds, and nobody will know what you're listening to. And you know, hearing new perspectives, and especially from therapists and psychologists, it can add up to a mental calibration and building her core strength. And if you feel like you have a pressed schedule, just think about maybe cutting back on certain things you might just gravitate to on autopilot, like Candy Crush or something like that, and instead listen to things like that. And once you feel like you have clarity and you've built some conviction, that's when you're going to have the strength to actually get out. But you have to believe with every fiber of your body of your body that you're doing the right thing and you deserve it. And then you can, get out and stay out.
Well said. The point about core strength and just the wisdom of knowing when you're waking up from a call, you have to be cautious as a serpent, innocent as a dove. You don't have to play by their rules. So, Lily, did you have any advice that you would like to share for someone who's trapped in an abusive relationship or just awakening from a high control religion, which essentially is an abusive relationship, right?
I would definitely recommend, when you are able to, being able to, go through some level of therapy yourself, I think can make such a huge difference. I know for myself, being able to talk through some of these things and, just being able to, again, just put these into context of my life and understand, why these things happened. And I know, for my own mother too, and thinking of her journey of, going from, being very, mentally in the organization and being in an abusive relationship, and then, finding her way to where she is in her life now. I'm just so proud of how far that she's come, and just seeing her become, just her kind of own true vibrant self, and also taking hard steps like, going to therapy herself and, building up her own life. And I think so much of that, again, it starts with allowing yourself to have, again, just a little bit of, what was it we were saying? Giving yourself a little bit of grace. And, you're not going to get there overnight, and, give yourself that time to heal.
Amen, Sister Lily. Ashli, did you have anything else that you would like to add about?
No, I think remembering that knowledge is power. So, like Elaine mentioned, educating yourself, really making sure that you understand the group that you've been a part of, understand your situation, how it should improve, and what you would like your life to look like. So, some level of planning. But with that, realizing that the organization designs your situation to be difficult. They use fear as a tool to keep you trapped and controlled. Okay, so understanding that some of the emotions you feel surrounding this situation are not your own. That is so powerful, right? We have all been through some level, whether you were born in or converted, we've all been through some level of indoctrination and brainwashing. And that's super hard to admit and to realize, but understand that you have power over your own life. You get to make your own decisions. And once you start educating yourself and deciding what you want your future to look like, you're already taking the first step to reclaiming your life.
Exactly. That's so true. Education is the foundation. And speaking of education, are there any tools, resources that you ladies would recommend to, especially women who are in that process of breaking free from this high control religious environment? Any resources that come to mind, and we can share a link in our podcast description to some of these resources as well.
Oh, yeah. I would recommend books by psychotherapist Bonnie Zeman, who was a witness herself. And so I thought her book, The Challenge to Heal, might be good. It's rated 4.8 on Amazon. And also her book called Reboot was very helpful to me. And I actually pulled it out and was reminded that it includes 356 well thought out questions or question prompts. And so, it was very helpful in getting clarity and focus as to, okay, now I'm out, and what do I want my life to look like? And what are the areas where I'm doing well? What are the areas that I really want to focus on? So I highly recommend that.
Thanks for that solid recommendation. Lily or Ashley, did you have any other resources or tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, I would say that I think there's something about furthering your education that is just so healing. And also this is something that can look different for every person. For myself, this looks like an 18-year-old, taking philosophy classes at a community college and realizing that there were so many different ideas out there. But I think this can also look like, just devouring different books, even, listening to different, types of podcasts or video essays on YouTube, and, really just finding ways to expand your horizons. Personally, once I was ready, so, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this if you've only been out of the organization for a week, but, give yourself some time. But I will say that I found something that was very healing was actually learning more about religion and the Bible itself from academic scholars. And so a couple of examples are The Origin of Satan by Elaine Pagels, and also God's Monsters by Esther Hamori. Those were two that, it really just sort of blew my mind, realizing that these things that had scared me so much as a child, learning about demons and everything, and realizing the history behind some of these beliefs and being able to heal past some of that.
I love that Lily brought up, building a college education. That is so empowering. When I first went to college, it was like a whole world of things I never knew were being laid out in front of me. And, thinking of the things that were most impactful for me when I was first leaving and waking up was taking a psychology class. That was super interesting for me in understanding why I felt the way that I feel, what makes a human tick, and even on a very basic level. There were kind of revelations that I had in this intro to psychology class. So it kind of shows you how stunted we are as witnesses and what we learn. But there were a few books that I really enjoyed that are definitely classics. Most people have heard of them, but if you haven't, Crisis of Conscience is a must read. You have to read that. There's no option. You have to. It's by a former governing body member who left, which is just mind blowing. It's also available as a podcast. Another book that I really liked is somewhat fictional, but very true to the way we're brought up in the religion, is I'm Perfect, You're Doomed by Kira Abrahams. Loved that book. It was funny. It was also very deep and really quite sad at times, but I really liked that. It's a quick read. It's a really good book. And then my favorite book of all time is Combating Cult Mind Control by Stephen Hassan. He has a podcast as well. He's a really, really insightful person. He was converted into the Moonies, which is, not the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yet he had such a similar experience that book really made me realize, oh, this is not a unique thing. There are many different religious cults existing in the world who are kind of operating at a very similar level using, the same techniques, the bite model, ways of control, behavior, information, thought, and I forget the last one.
Emotional.
Emotional. Which is so, reading it, I was like, am I reading about the Moonies or the Witnesses? It was so similar. So I think those things, and then I can't stress enough how important it is to relate to folks who have been in the religion. You don't have to have had the same exact situation to feel understood and heard. So those were the most impactful things for me.
Loving all of these like suggestions. It's amazing to see what else is out there. So we're gonna come to the grand finale here of our debut podcast. We have one more question. What are our goals at the Liberati when it comes to women's empowerment?
Well, I would say that we're certainly going to continue what we've been doing all along, which is to share inspiring stories about, how transformative post-traumatic growth can be. And in our private Facebook group, as you mentioned, there are multiple phenomenal women, and they clearly live authentically and unapologetically. And so not only have they become accomplished, but more importantly, they have big hearts for contributing to the group and helping others. So if you're at all interested, please send in an application.
We could have a whole podcast, and hopefully we will, celebrating these wonderful women that have broken the chains of the patriarchy. And they haven't just survived, they are thriving and doing amazing things. We have three of them here. It's been an honor to interview you. And we hope that we can amplify the voices of these women. We need more of these success stories out there because they are powerful to inspire others. Lily or Ashley, did you have anything else you would like to add about our goals for empowering women?
Yeah, I would say, we are working so hard to empower everyone in our group. And I think especially women, where we held this kind of unique position, Lily mentioned as second-class citizens. So it's all the more important for us to help women with their self-development, their self-esteem, and their own empowerment. So I, really want to make sure that folks are healing, that they're growing, that they're setting goals and reaching those goals. And it can be done. And sometimes we need help. And it, really doesn't make sense to do it all yourself when you have folks who are there and willing to talk to you. So, if you're a woman and you're looking to develop your career path or your education or, whatever it is, there are so many folks in the Facebook group, as Elaine mentioned, who have done the work and who are able to share their insights and their pathways to success so that you might have it a little bit easier.
100%. And I think too, just remembering, anything that you are going through, you are, maybe I think all of our situations are a little bit different, but, there's some other people with similar situations. And that's the whole point of being able to sort of build a community on your own terms and being able to learn from others and to, pull resources from others. And eventually someday you'll be that person for somebody else too.
Well said. Well, I honestly, it's been an honor. I feel like I've been the thorn among roses, among lilies. But thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Lily. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insight with us today. And if you are interested in the Liberati, if you'd like to reach out to one of our guests, feel free to visit our website, theliberati.org. And our mission, of course, empowering survivors of high control religions to break free. That's what Liberati means, to break free. And we are working this grassroots movement. We're all volunteers, but we're working on developing programs. We have monthly group discussions. You're welcome to join. There are many PMOs, physically and mentally out, who will join our discussions. One of them listened in from the Kingdom Hall restroom on mute, and that was interesting recently. And we also have in-person meetups. It's a wonderful community, and we hope to continue to I have some podcasts coming up, a little series. Hopefully this won't be a one and done, but we appreciate everyone who's interested in our mission, everyone who's been so generous supporting our mission. We couldn't do this without you. We are stronger together. So thank you for your interest and your support. And if you would like to offer a resource, some advice to add to our helpful resources page, if you'd like to get involved, please reach out, send us a message. I believe right now we're looking for individuals who perhaps have temporary housing available for people who are just waking up and need just a place, a safe space to stay. So please do reach out, and thank you so much for your interest and your support. Ashley, did you have anything else to add as a final message to put the cherry on top?
Yeah. Again, thank you to everyone who listened to this podcast. We appreciate each and every person who is in this community supporting and helping. If you need help yourself, again, you can go right to our website and fill out a contact form. And then, just remembering that if you are trying to navigate leaving a high control group or religion, you are not alone, truly. You're not alone. There's support there. There's hope. There is a pathway to freedom. And, remembering again that you deserve the kindness. Give yourself grace. You are worthy of love, peace, and a new beginning. And the Liberati is here to support you with that.